Mr. Hernandez,
Yes, sir.
how you doing?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself, sir?
What do I call an astronaut? Officer Hernandez, or is it just Mr. Hernandez, or astronaut? You know what is it?
It could be Dr. Hernandez. It could
Dr.
be
Hernandez. Okay.
Astronaut Hernandez. It could be Mr. Hernandez. It could be Jose. Whatever you want to call me. I've been called worse.
Okay. At the end of the interview, I'll start calling you Jose once I get to know you a little bit better.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
So I know that obviously you're an astronaut and you want to talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you learned in training to be an astronaut and on your mission to the International Space Station, right? And how you can use some of that training to talk to us about how to handle the lockdown, the quarantine, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Before we get there, I want our audience to learn a little bit more about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became an astronaut.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I come from a migrant farm working family, and my parents are from Mexico, so I'm first generation here. And I was born here in the U.S. There's 4 of us in our family. 2 of us were born here, 2 in Mexico. Only reason why I was born here is because I was born during the harvest months. The routine we had with our family was spending 9 months in California following the harvest of the crops. 2 months in Southern California, 2 months in Central California, 5 months in Northern California, where I'm at now, here in Stockton, California. And then 3 months back in my parents' hometown. And we repeated that whole process. It wasn't until my 2nd grade teacher, Miss Young, came home to our house when I told her we were leaving for Mexico for yet another 3 months. And I asked her for 3 months worth of homework, that she finally came to our house. And since I'm the youngest of 4, she had my older siblings in her class, so I guess 4th time was the charm. She came and she kind of read the riot act to my parents and said, look, you have bright kids, and the only way they're going to do well is if they stay in one place. And so we made Stockton, California, our home base after that.
Amazing.
And then a lot of people say, okay, well, how did the interest of becoming an astronaut come about? Well, I was 10 years old when I got to watch the very last Apollo mission, Apollo 17.
Wow.
It was December 1972. You could picture a 10-year-old boy holding rabbit ear antennas for better reception for dear life, watching astronaut Gene Cernan walk on the surface of the moon. And man, I was hooked. When I saw that, I said, that's what I want to be. And ever since then, I was gunning to become an astronaut.
Now, what did you study in college? And did you know that you were going to be an astronaut when you were studying, I think, engineering was one of your degrees?
Exactly. I knew I had to go into the science fields. And one of the temptations, is to say, okay, I'm going to be an astronomer because they study the stars, right? But I was more pragmatic, more practical. I said, I want to make sure I have a job after I graduate. And I don't know where astronomers work, And so I figured if I become an engineer, I could get a job anywhere. And so I decided to get into electrical engineering. And then I knew that I needed to get a graduate degree if I was going to be competitive. So I went from a small private university here in Stockton, University of the Pacific. The only reason why I went here is because I could still live at home and not pay room and board. And so it ended up being cheaper than a UC school. And then after finishing there, I transferred over. I went on to UC Santa Barbara for my graduate degree. And then that's when I started working at Lawrence Livermore Lab, and then started saying, okay, now I got to do other things to make myself more marketable to NASA. And I started applying as soon as I was eligible to apply. As soon as I got my graduate degree, started applying. But then every year I would say, why didn't they select me? I would compare myself with the other successful candidates that got selected and ask myself a very basic question: what do they have that I don't have? Mm-hmm. And so that would be most of them were pilots. So I invested in becoming a pilot and took flight lessons and became a pilot. Another year, I noticed that they were all scuba diver rated. And I said, well, I guess I got to get scuba divers. So I would drive every weekend from Stockton, 2-hour drive to Monterey, California. And then I got basic certified, I got advanced certified, I got scuba rescue, scuba master. I want to make sure NASA knew I knew how to scuba dive. All right. I would have done the same thing with flying, but it's too expensive to learn how to fly a jet. So I stopped at a small airplane because I just couldn't afford it. But I kept flying and got more experience in flying. And then the third thing I think that really tipped the scale was that I was working at Lawrence Livermore Lab, and they were looking for scientists to go work in Russia at the nuclear facilities of the Russians up in Siberia, and to help the Russians take control of their nuclear stockpile, because that was the time when the former Soviet Union broke apart. And now we had this Russian Federation that wanted help controlling their nuclear material. And so they came to the US, the State Department came to the national labs because we deal with nuclear material. And they wanted scientists to go out there and help the Russians. And so no one wanted to go. But man, I raised my hand. I said, put me in, coach, I'll go. And I didn't do it because I wanted to get to know Siberia in the middle of winter, believe me. The reason why I did it was because I had read in the newspaper that the US and the newly formed Russian Federation had just signed an agreement to build what was going to be the International Space Station. So it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, even though I was one, but it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we were going to be working with the Russians up in space. You know, we had done a little bit with the Soyuz Salyut missions, but this was going to be, no kidding, we were going to build a station together. So I said, if I take this job, man, I'm going to have a skill set that very few other aspiring astronauts have. Experience, gone to Russia, experience working with the Russians. And then I told my boss, can I take Russian language lessons? And he said, yeah, knock yourself out. So я понимаю по-русски язык. I learned Russian. And then all of a sudden, that's when NASA started calling and said, hey, we're interested in you. And so after 11 rejections,
wow,
you know, I got selected the 12th time.
And how did you stick with it? Because I mean, most people after getting rejected a few times would probably give up.
Well, yeah, but you know, I'm a, you know, when you look at a glass, I always look at it half full, not half empty kind of guy. And I would always psych myself in, not psych myself out, in the sense that I get frustrated. I mean, sure, there's disappointment. No one likes rejection, right? But I always looked at myself and I said, hey, Jose, you know, as a kid, you were a migrant farm worker. You were picking cucumbers for 50 cents a bucket. And you're at this point in life now. What happens if you don't get selected as an astronaut? And then I would answer myself. I said, well, wanting to be an astronaut forced me to go to college. Wanting to be an astronaut forced me to get a graduate degree, forced me to become a pilot, forced me to be scuba diver rated, forced me to learn the third language, and I have a damn good paying job, certainly more than 50 cents a bucket, at a premier national research facility named Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I said, you know, it's not such a bad consolation prize if I don't get selected. So that's how I never got frustrated. I was always blessed. I was always thanked in the for the position that I was at currently, because it was so much more than when I grew up.
Awesome. What is it about the training that you had to undergo, as well as, you know, being in sorts of isolation and being up and working in the International Space Station? What are the things that you had to go through that prepared you for quarantines and lockdowns? And what are things that us laymen, citizens, I don't know what you would call, what you call people that are not astronauts or not in the military, what can we take from what you can teach about how to handle the lockdown better?
Well, you know, I think that being an astronaut sort of naturally prepares you for this social isolation pandemic that we're in the sense that the first thing, in terms of the experience I've had for preparation, is that obviously I went up into space to the International Space Station. Before that, you get about 2 weeks worth of medical isolation, quarantine, so you're not with your family. So you're already 2 weeks in before the mission even starts, where you're isolated already. So you have that experience. I also did a underwater lunar analog mission. And what's that? Well, off the coast of Cocoa Beach in Florida, there's a habitat underwater, about 60 feet underwater, called Aquarius. Yeah, and it's basically, think of it as a small submarine submerged underwater. And I think the University of North Carolina runs it. NASA leases it. So what we did is a small crew dove down. This is why you have to be a scuba diver. We dove down, and then we went into the habitat, and we did a 14-day mission, pretending we were on the moon. And we had a work list, a schedule, just like a real mission. On the beach on top, we had a mission control center. And so we practiced everything, including moonwalks. We could go outside the bottom of the ocean, and we were weighted just right that it was 1/6 the gravity of Earth. So we knew how it was to walk on the moon, and we did all kinds of experiments. We also did other training, like survival training. We were up in Maine, up in the forest, where we spent 14 days up there. We were also in the mountains of Wyoming during the snow, winter survival training. Another 14 days up there. We were also on the ocean in Baja California with a small sailboat, and we were expected to survive, in the ocean 14 days again. And so all these type of missions built the team camaraderie, so you became like a family. But more importantly, you learn everybody's strengths and weaknesses, and you learn how to communicate. And what I found out of all these experiences is that you, first of all and foremost, you gotta have a positive attitude. So it always helps to look at the glass half full, not half empty. And the way I look at it with this virus, COVID-19, is that, I have 5 kids, and 4 of them are back with us because they're off in college, and college, of course, are closed. So they're back with us, spending a lot of time with us, and time that we wouldn't have been able to spend. So how lucky are we that we're able to create additional memories with our kids, that if things were normal, I would be doing my thing, they would be doing their thing, but now we get to see them every day and we spend time with them. So that's let's look at it from the positive perspective, is we get to spend more time, for those of us lucky enough to spend time with our family and be in confinement with our family. Second thing is, you've got to communicate effectively, because now we're in small confined spaces. The patient's barometer is much more sensitive. And so I find that what's best to do is do what NASA does. Is that what NASA does is what we do is, when we run through procedures, we repeat them. In other words, if I'm telling my pilot, say Kevin, check ISO valve open, he responds, Roger that, Jose, ISO valve open. What does that do? That lets me hear the command I gave him for him to check, and then he tells it to me, so that I say, okay, I gave it to him correctly, and then he verifies that it is open. So it's a safety measure kind of thing. And at home, if you do that, when someone requests, to say, hey, go get me this, and that, and then you repeat it and say, wait a minute, you want me to go get this, and that? That accomplishes 2 things. It allows the person who made the request hear the request from a different voice, and then it allows him to sort of analyze and say, wait, was that a reasonable request? And it sort of filters out unreasonable requests and de-escalates what could be a conflict. So I think that's the thing that you've got to do. Then you got to create a schedule too. You're at home. Temptation is, I'm just going to sit in front of TV and watch TV and surf. And oh, by the way, I'll get up and do this, or I'll get up and do that. Don't do that. I mean, run a schedule as if you're at work. Get on your computer if you have one, and on your calendar, and put your activities for the day, for the week. Like say, okay, today I'm gonna read the book I wanted to read. I'm gonna maybe take a guitar lesson online. Tomorrow I'm gonna mow the lawn. Got to do the grocery shopping. And so what does that allow you to do? It allows you to quantify how your day's been. You're able to check off and you claim small victories of accomplishment that makes you feel like you were productive. So do those type of things. And again, bond with the family. I can't emphasize enough that you got to create nice memories. I mean, I'm doing a couple projects I'm doing with two of my girls. The first one is that new application TikTok.
Right.
My daughter's a fanatic on TikTok, and so I come on and make guest appearances. And so if you want to see something silly, I mean, go to her account. It's Vanessa_ADE, and you'll see me make those appearances and make it. I know it's gonna come bite me in the butt if I ever decide to run for office because they're so silly. But it's nice. It's kind of a nice memory I'm making with my daughter that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to do it. She started from 0. She's up to like over 30,000 followers, and so she's doing great on it. The other thing I'm doing is my other daughter, she's a health fanatic. We ordered a bench, and to my surprise, there's no weights available. You can't order weights. They're all sold out. So what am I doing? I'm making weights out of cement with her, and we're making some our own weights. We're making a barbell, out of a pipe, and we're making cement disc. So we're making weights. We're making dumbbells. And so now we'll be able to exercise in the garage.
That sounds like a total engineer dad thing to do. Because you're an engineer, building things is going to be part of the process. I like that.
Exactly.
Oh, those are amazing tips. Well, I really love the repeating someone's direction back to them or having them repeat it to you so you really understand what it is that's being asked. And sometimes you hear it and you're like, oh, okay, maybe that's too much, or the person understands it enough. And you're like, right, they understand it, so they're taking it upon themselves. All right, so I want to ask more about what you did up in the International Space Station. So being an engineer, I'm assuming that you were either building or fixing the electrical engineering on the space station, right?
Well, I was the flight engineer.
Okay.
So I was kind of, you're familiar with Star Trek. I was Scotty in Star Trek, the flight engineer. The one that says, we need more power, Captain. That was me. And because of that, I had the best seat in the house during launch and landing because I'm part of the flight crew. There's 4 of us in the flight crew on the flight deck and 3 in the mid deck. The 3 in the mid deck are basically a sack of potatoes going up and down. They have no flight responsibilities, but I wouldn't feel bad for them because they have the best job once they're up there. They're the spacewalkers. They put on the spacesuits and they go up, man. They got the coolest job up there. But the flight crew, if you could imagine 4 of us, there's 2 and 2, and we're offset a little bit. The 2 pilots in front of me, I'm sitting behind them a little, but kind of in the middle of them. And then the communications engineer is sitting to my right. And the reason why I'm in the middle is because I have to see the displays that both pilots see, because I'm the one that's hawking the displays to see if anything goes out of tolerance. If something goes out of tolerance, then I peel off with the person that owns the system, either the commander or the pilot, and we work the problem while the other pilot does nominal duties. And so that's how that works.
Now, is there a window in the front, though? Can you look out a front window?
Yeah, there's a window up there. Yeah, real high, but yeah, you can see as you're blasting off, you can start to see.
Do you remember the moment where the sky turned from blue to black?
Yeah, it does pretty quickly. It goes pretty quickly. All of a sudden, you just start seeing, and then, wow, it's black.
Okay, I'm gonna ask like really mundane. Some of these questions are gonna be like, wait a minute, hold on, these aren't. But this is what I wondered. What is it like seeing the sun shine with black around it? Because we're so used to it illuminating a blue sky, or maybe at dawn or dusk, a reddish pinkish sky. But to see, the sun shining bright, but then around it is black, right?
Exactly. It's real easy.
Crazy.
It's real easy. Do you have any kids?
No, I don't, but maybe.
Okay, well, your girlfriend. Go to the closet with your girlfriend. Have her stand on the other side of the closet. Close the door. Turn off the lights and have her turn on a flashlight, small flashlight. That's how it looks. It's all black around and just a flashlight. Or go outside on a roadway in a country road wait for a motorcycle to come, and you see that one little light. That's how it looks.
Okay, now could you? You can't see stars when the sun is shining in your direction, right? It blinds out the stars. You can only see the stars. I'm assuming when you're on the other side of the planet and it's dark. Or
No. As long as you're not looking near where the sun's at. If you look the other way and you get dark adapted, you turn all the lights off in the cabin.
Right.
And get dark adapted. You can see the light. You can see stars.
And what was it when you got into the space station? You're floating, right? There's no gravity up there, right?
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that sensation like for you?
Oh, it's great. You never get tired of zero G. You know, it's great. At first, you're clumsy, bumping into stuff, but then afterwards, man, you push yourself off walls and you do your best Superman impersonations.
Nice. But what about digestion? Like, does your how does your body react to eating in zero G?
Well, your esophagus has muscles. So when you eat food, it forces it down the stomach, it digests it normally, and your intestines force the food normally.
No, I saw. I don't know if in the International Space Station, if you guys are far enough out, but I've heard some of the moon missions astronauts, they would say that when they would close their eyes, they would see like little electrodes or something shooting or something. I don't know if it was something that you could see.
No. What happens is when you close your eyes, and that's happened to me several times. When you close your eyes, what happens is the same thing happens as with material that is reactive to radiation. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, that's how CCD cameras work. Is what happens is radiation hits the material, and the material creates a burst of light as a result of that radiation. And that burst of light is what goes on radiographs or your camera. And that's why you're able to see images. This is for medical imaging. And so that's the same thing that's happening in our eyes. We close our eyes, some radiation hits our cornea, and then it creates a reaction with a little burst of light, and you say, whoa. But what happens is you just got zapped with radiation, cosmic radiation.
That must suck when you're trying to go to sleep.
Yeah, but it's not like it's all over the place. It's like, you're lucky to see one or two throughout the night.
And you have to sleep strapped in, right?
No, you're in a sleeping bag.
But that's so weird. Like there's no like resting. You're like floating, right?
You don't need to rest. You don't need a pillow. When you fall asleep in class, your head goes down. In space, it doesn't go down. You don't need a pillow. It's so weird. Sometimes you're sleeping like this. Because wherever your hand is at when you fall asleep, right, that's where it's gonna stay.
How did you feel when you got back to Earth gravity? When you got back like after what, 14, 15 days? Yeah.
How did I feel? It feels like you just got off a boat that where you were at a few days with lots of waves.
Right.
Your vestibular balance system, which is in your inner ear, is not calibrated. So it feels like everything is kind of still in motion. And so what do? If you look at the astronauts when they get out and return from space, they always have a wide stance. We call it a cowboy stance because the footing is unsure. And so you want to be as wide as you can to have a good balance.
All right, last question. What do you think of these flat earthers? I mean, you've seen the Earth, right? It's round. You can verify firsthand that the Earth is round. Okay.
That's correct. I would ask them, why would everybody want to lie about the shape of the Earth?
Right.
What's the motivation there? Come on, guys.
Because they just don't want to believe I totally get being, I'm gonna be skeptical about certain things, but you're right. Like, what is the point of everyone thinking that the Earth is round when it's really flat?
Yeah,
you can see the moon, you can see planets through the telescope. I don't know. They drive me crazy.
And I would tell them, I saw it with my own eyes. The Earth is round.
They're gonna say you're a liar. You're part of the Illuminati.
Well, you know what? I would tell them?
Yeah.
I would do what we do with the universities when we do near space payloads. I put a GoPro camera and on a helium balloon, let it go up 100,000 feet, and you'll see the curvature of the Earth.
Yeah, I've seen those videos. I've seen those
Yeah.
videos. They just won't believe anything. Listen, Dr. Jose Hernandez, astronaut Jose Hernandez.
Jose.
Thank you. Yeah, I know you now, so I'll call you Jose. Thank you so much for the tips about handling the, the quarantine, and also about your story. You're very inspirational to our Latino audience, and also thanks for answering some of my curious questions about what it's
No
like.
problem. It was fun doing it. Thank you very much.